Have you ever agreed with something in a conversation, nodded along, said, "Yeah, totally," and then 20 minutes later, alone in your car, thought, "Wait, do I actually believe that?" That small gap, that tiny delay between saying something and actually feeling it, most people never notice it. But it's one of the strangest and most revealing moments a human mind can produce, because it means, somewhere along the way, you agreed with an idea before you ever actually examined it. And here's the uncomfortable part. This isn't rare. This isn't something that happens to unintelligent people or weak-willed people or people who just don't think for themselves. This happens constantly, quietly, to almost everyone, including the people who are most convinced they're independent thinkers. Because the truth is, thinking for yourself was never the default setting of the human mind. It's something you have to actively fight for. And most of us stopped fighting for it a long time ago, without ever realizing the moment it happened. Think about the last big opinion you formed. Maybe it was about a person, a political issue, a movie, a public figure, even a stranger online. Now ask yourself honestly, did that opinion start inside you? Or did it start somewhere else, in a comment section, a group chat, a video essay, a headline, and then quietly move into you, disguised as your own thought? Here's what's interesting. Your brain cannot easily tell the difference between an idea it generated and an idea it absorbed. Once information sits in your memory long enough, it starts to feel like it belongs to you. Psychologists call this the illusion of explanatory depth, the sense that we understand something deeply, when in reality, we've only ever borrowed the conclusion, never actually built it ourselves. Imagine a kid who grows up hearing his parents talk about a certain group of people, a certain country, a certain kind of person to avoid. He never questions it. He never researches it. He just absorbs it the way skin absorbs sunlight, slowly, invisibly, permanently. By the time he's an adult, he doesn't remember being taught the belief. He just believes it. It feels like his own conclusion. It isn't. It was installed. That's the first unsettling truth about independent thought. Most beliefs don't arrive through reasoning. They arrive through exposure. But here's what nobody talks about. This isn't just about childhood or upbringing. It happens every single day, in real time, to fully grown adults who consider themselves rational and self-aware. Think about scrolling through social media. You open the app already holding a neutral opinion about some topic. 15 minutes later, without reading a single study, without hearing an opposing argument, you have a strong, confident, almost aggressive opinion. Where did that certainty come from? It came from repetition, not evidence. Your brain mistakes familiarity for truth. The more times you see an idea, the more your mind quietly assumes it must be valid. This is called the illusory truth effect, and it works even on people who know it exists. That's the strange part. Knowing about a bias doesn't automatically protect you from it. Your rational brain, the prefrontal cortex, likes to believe it's steering the ship. But underneath, older, faster systems are already forming judgments before logic even gets a vote. Now here's where it gets even stranger. Independent thought isn't just being attacked by outside information. It's being quietly discouraged by your own nervous system. Disagreeing with a group, even a group of strangers online, activates something very similar to physical pain in the brain. Social rejection lights up regions overlapping with the ones responsible for processing actual bodily injury. This means, on a biological level, standing apart from the crowd doesn't just feel uncomfortable. It feels dangerous. Your brain, shaped by hundreds of thousands of years of tribal survival, still treats social exclusion as a threat to your literal survival. Even though today, disagreeing with someone online won't get you left behind by a hunting party or exiled from a village. So what does your brain do to avoid that pain? It takes the path of least resistance. It agrees. It nods. It absorbs the group's opinion as its own, quietly, automatically, long before you consciously decide anything. This is where a lot of people misunderstand themselves. They think, I'm not a follower. I make my own decisions. But following doesn't always look like following. Sometimes it looks like confidently repeating an idea you heard from someone louder, someone earlier, someone who simply said it first and said it with conviction. Have you noticed how certain phrases spread across an entire platform within days? Suddenly, everyone is using the same joke, the same insult, the same explanation for the same event. It doesn't feel like conformity while it's happening. It feels like clarity. It feels like finally understanding something. That feeling is one of the most convincing illusions the human mind produces. But wait, there's another layer to this, and it's even more personal. Independent thinking doesn't just get overridden by other people. It gets overridden by your own past self. Once you form an opinion, even a small one, your brain starts protecting it. Not because the opinion is necessarily correct, but because changing your mind requires energy, and energy is expensive to a brain that evolved during times of scarcity. This is why people cling to beliefs even after seeing evidence against them. It's called cognitive dissonance, that uncomfortable tension between what you believe and what reality is showing you. And instead of resolving that tension by updating the belief, most people resolve it by rejecting the new information instead. It's simply easier. Imagine spending money on a course, a diet plan, a relationship, or an ideology. The moment doubt creeps in, most people don't say, maybe I made a mistake. They say, I need to defend this decision, because admitting the mistake threatens their identity, not just their opinion. That's the real reason people stop thinking for themselves. It's not laziness. It's self-protection. Every belief you hold becomes a small brick in the structure of who you think you are. And once enough bricks are stacked, questioning one feels like risking the whole building. Here's what's fascinating though. Children don't have this problem nearly as much. Watch a 5-year-old encounter new information. They don't defend an existing worldview. They absorb, question, discard, and rebuild constantly. Their identity isn't yet fused with their opinions. That's why children can be shockingly perceptive, sometimes more honest than adults, because nothing inside them is protecting an old conclusion. Somewhere between childhood and adulthood, most people quietly stop updating their internal map of the world. Not because they run out of curiosity, but because the cost of staying updated starts to feel too high. Admitting you were wrong publicly, losing an argument, being seen as inconsistent, disappointing people who expect you to agree with them. So the mind takes a shortcut. Instead of continuously reasoning through new information, it starts outsourcing judgment to trusted sources, a political party, a favorite creator, a parent, a partner, a community. And here's the twist. Outsourcing judgment isn't inherently bad. No human being has the time or expertise to independently verify every piece of information in the world. The problem isn't trusting others. The problem is forgetting that you're doing it. Because once trust becomes invisible, it stops being questioned. And once it stops being questioned, it stops being trust. It becomes identity. Think about how strongly people defend opinions they've never actually researched. Not because the opinion is well-formed, but because somewhere along the way, it silently became part of who they are. Attacking the idea starts to feel like attacking the person, and the brain reacts accordingly with defensiveness, anger, or emotional shutdown, the same way it might respond to a physical threat. This is why arguments online rarely change anyone's mind. It was never really about the argument. It was about protecting identity from perceived attack. Now here's the unexpected part, the part almost nobody talks about. The people most confident they're thinking independently are often the ones most captured by groupthink, just a different group. Someone might proudly say, I don't follow the mainstream narrative, while unknowingly repeating, word for word, an alternative narrative created by someone else entirely. The feeling of rebellion can be just as manufactured as the feeling of conformity. Both provide the same psychological reward: belonging, certainty, identity, without requiring the uncomfortable, slow, effortful process of actually thinking something through from scratch. Real independent thought doesn't usually feel triumphant. It often feels uncertain. It feels like holding two contradictory pieces of evidence at once and admitting, "I don't fully know yet." That discomfort, that unresolved feeling, is often mistaken for weakness. In reality, it's one of the rarest and most valuable mental states a person can occupy. So what does actual independent thinking look like, biologically speaking? It requires slowing down long enough for the prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for reasoning, weighing evidence, and delaying instinctive reactions, to actually engage before the faster emotional systems finish deciding for you. Most modern environments are specifically designed to prevent that pause. Fast media, addictive headlines, rapid-fire content, constant social validation. Every layer of it rewards instant reaction, not reflection. Some psychologists believe that the modern information environment has essentially built a system that punishes slow thinking and rewards fast agreement. Every share, every like, every reaction happens in seconds. There is no built-in space for doubt. And doubt, uncomfortable as it feels, might be one of the last remaining signs of genuine independent cognition. Here's a strange but oddly comforting thought. If you've ever felt confused about your own opinion, unsure whether you actually believe something or just absorbed it, that confusion isn't a flaw. It might actually be your mind waking up. It might be the first sign that you're separating your identity from your beliefs long enough to actually examine them. Most people never reach that point, not because they're incapable, but because nobody ever told them it was allowed. Somewhere along the way, certainty became mistaken for intelligence, and doubt became mistaken for weakness. In truth, it's almost the opposite. The people who change their minds when new evidence appears aren't inconsistent. They're using their brain the way it was actually designed to be used, as an adaptive, updating system, not a fixed monument built once and defended forever. So maybe the goal was never to have the most confident opinions in the room. Maybe it was never to win the most arguments or appear the most certain online. Maybe the real marker of a healthy mind is something much quieter. The willingness to occasionally sit with the thought, "I'm not sure yet," without feeling like your identity is falling apart. If any part of this made you pause, if some small part of your mind whispered, "Wait, maybe that's actually been happening to me," that reaction alone is worth paying attention to, because noticing it is the first step most people never take. And if this idea felt uncomfortably familiar, there's a related psychological pattern that goes even deeper. Something that explains why some people can spot manipulation instantly, while others fall for the exact same tactic again and again, without ever noticing the pattern repeating in their own life. That's a story about the human mind you're going to want to understand next.